What's up, my friend? Welcome back to another video. So today we're going to be taking a look at a brand new sample library called Balvi Cello from David Forner. So this is essentially a solo cello library that specializes in romantic legato. And if you know me and my musical tendencies, my style of music, you know that this for me is sort of a no-brainer. I had to listen on VI Control and I was sold. So David was very kind to send me a copy for this video. And if you are interested in the library, I'll include a link down below in the description where you can check it out, as well as my sample library buyer's guide, where it's always free. You know, you can grab it on hand anytime, so you can see what I use on a regular basis. And if you want to check it out, it's down below there as well, as a gift for just checking out this video today. So let's kind of get into the library. Balvi Cello, Balvi is sort of a difficult name for me to remember, I won't lie, but the sub-headline of romantic legato is what really interests me. So let me just play you a few notes here. This is what it sounds like out of the box, nothing tweaked, and then we'll talk about our impressions a little bit. So here we go. All right, so that is the out-of-the-box sound of the library. So quite a dry approach, as you can hear. And the demos on the website, at least for the main trailer, the cello was a little bit on the wetter side, so there's quite a bit of reverb applied, but I think it's always a good approach, especially with solo instruments. If you record them in a drier space, then it sort of forces you to be very deliberate and careful with the scripting to make it sound as realistic as possible, especially with legato, because it's so upfront and exposed, right? It's very difficult to get right. And I think the legato here is nearly perfect to my ears. It's the only thing that kind of stands out to me is that just before each transition, you can sort of hear where the sample is starting or where the legato transition is being activated, and then it slides into the transition. For example, let's play a couple notes here. Just before each subsequent note, you can hear a very, very slight, almost hiccup, like da, 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 da. It's not that noticeable in the context of a fuller mix, and I've experimented with this in some larger sessions, especially with some reverb. It kind of hides it a little bit better, but because it's so exposed and upfront, you can really pick apart every single detail, right? And that's, for me, is the only legato niggle that I'm hearing in the library. But again, in a more in a larger context where there's other instruments surrounding it, and you know, this can definitely stand on its own for some melodic purposes. I do really like how David has sampled basically one dynamic layer, I believe, and I think he mentions this on the sales page, but from the very bottom of the mod wheel, it's sort of niente. Like from 0, you hear nothing. So I'm already playing a note right now, but let's push up the mod wheel. And you can hear that volume is very, there's a lot of range there actually, but it's just that one dynamic layer. So the absolute volume is the thing that's being changed here just from the mod wheel. A lot of range there, but it's all one dynamic, but it does simulate some dynamics being applied by the performer. So I do think this is sort of the best of both worlds approach, where you don't get any phasing for the dynamic layers being transitioned in between, but you also get that dynamic range just by having that simulated dynamic, right, through the mod wheel. So that's a cool thing. The other thing is that we have two types of legato transitions. You have the regular ones that are being sampled. And then you also have faster runs legato that is sampled up to a major second. So basically for runs like chromatic scales or even just regular scales, you can hear how the legato actually kept up really, really well. You can hear how the fingered legato kind of sounds very realistic there. So I do really enjoy that. But of course, when you play more broken chords where they're separated by thirds and stuff like that, the legato isn't quite as fast. So, that's to be expected when the fast legato is sampled up to a second, right? But it's a really cool additional option that enables you to play faster runs within a second if necessary. So that's a cool little touch as well. Okay, let's apply a little bit of reverb now. Let's just hear that as well, and then we'll kind of play with these different subsequent legato notes. So basically, if I play at a regular velocity, like somewhere in the middle, we're going to get the regular vibrato coming in. If I play very lightly, we get progressive vibrato, so that's great for slower melodies. And then decrescendo if you play really, really hard. So let's try this out a little bit. Right, so that very last sample, the decrescendo, I was holding the note the entire time, and the cello or the performer basically decrescendo to nothing on their own. Very similar to the soloist series from Orchestral Tools, the woodwind libraries. They don't loop any of the sustains. You just hold the note and they fade out on their own time. So this is pretty much the same approach there. And then, of course, sometimes we heard the progressive vibrato where I play very, very lightly and the vibrato takes just a second before it comes in, which makes for a much more musical approach. So not every subsequent legato note you're playing has immediate vibrato, obviously. So that would sound less musical if it was captured that way, which is nice. One other thing I do really like about this library is that they sample it up to a high G here, which is definitely lacking in some other libraries. Like a lot of cellos that are sampled maybe go up to a C4 and maybe sometimes a D, but very rarely above an E, So I do really like that they go all the way up to this high G there. It's a very realistic range to sort of be able to play tons of different melodies that you might be thinking of. So yeah, now with that being said, I think the reverb actually lends itself very well to this library. Let's turn it up a little bit more and see how that might sound. Right, so the reverb, I think there's a point of diminishing returns, like past maybe 2 o'clock or so, it starts to muddy up the sound just a little bit, like affecting the original sound source in a little bit of an undesirable way to my ear at least. But around like 1 or 12 to 2 o'clock, I think I really like that sort of setting there. One other thing I would have loved actually is a dedicated soft attack for this library. So I think these definitely allow you to trigger different vibrato amounts for the starting notes. You hear how the vibrato takes a second before coming in. So similar functionality to this here. But I think having an even softer layer for initial starting notes in a phrase would be really, really nice, because even playing at the softest velocity, you can still hear a distinct tug on the bow, right? Da, da, so like... right? It feels like they're really tugging at the string to start the phrase. So I would have loved some additional samples that let you go, like it lets you start from 0 and kind of seep in, whereas this one, there's a very deliberate attack to the note. That's my only other niggle, really. But aside from that, I really do like the sound. So let's actually hear this in context a little bit. I've written a very short chord progression, and let's see how this cello might soar over a string bed. So let's give this a try, and I'll leave the reverb at about 2 o'clock. And yeah, in case you're wondering, these strings are just regular Cinematic Studio strings. I'm just using the light ensemble there just to play some chords. And if we take a look at the mod wheel data, it's basically just chords. I'm using sustains, of course, here, and the modulation is kind of following the phrase a little bit, just riding up and down to the end of the bar, rising up and down again. And then here I kind of go up and down over a 4-bar phrase, sort of. So it's 2 different ways to approach it. Like you can do a rise and fall every 2 bars, or you can do a rise and fall every 4 bars. Just depends on the musical context. So let's have a listen and let's improvise just a little bit with this cello. Here we go. And there we go. So yeah, at least in this sort of default state where the reverb is applied not too generously, it definitely feels like the performer is quite up close, right? And the strings are further back. So we could even apply our own additional reverb if we wanted to, right? Like let's say Valhalla, let's set it to about 20%. Let's see what that sounds like. Yeah, I actually really like that additional depth and sort of width that Valhalla Room adds to the signal. So yeah, it's always better to have like a drier signal with which you can add reverb to versus a really wet sample. It's a lot more difficult and less realistic to try to remove the room sound from that sample. Even though there are plugins that can do that sort of thing, it's always better to start with a detailed sound source and then you can add reverb around it. But I do think what they give us here is a great starting point. The final thing we'll do here is maybe just listen to these mic positions just a little bit. So let's kind of hear just the close by itself and see what it sounds like. Let me actually turn off Valhalla there, and let's turn down the reverb a bit so we hear a bit more of that more accurately. Very cool. Let's hear the mid mic now. And then we have the far mic. Right, so this is kind of like opposite to Spitfire chamber strings or like SSO, where for those libraries, no matter how close you try to get the instruments, like with closer mic positions, you still hear quite a bit of the Air Studio sound in there, right? But this library is sort of the opposite. No matter how far you try to go with the mic positions, you can definitely tell it's mic'd up relatively close in comparison. So the best way to go about it is probably just to have a mix of these mics. If it were me, I'd probably do some close. I probably would make the mid mic my primary mic, and then the far would just be kind of similar to the close, just to add a little bit of room depth. But very, very likely that I would be adding some reverb in addition to this as well. Because the sample libraries I tend to use, like CSS or Cinesamples, sometimes Spitfire and Orchestral Tools, they tend to have some baked-in reverb already with their mic positions. So I would have to add some reverb in order to get this to match as well. But all in all, a very, very cool library. Definitely a supplementary one if you don't already have a cello library. You know, like this would not be a workhorse library. A workhorse typically has standard articulations plus extended articulations, sort of as a bonus. But this one really just comes with the one articulation, which is legato. Good legato, of course, but just know that you'll probably need other cello libraries to supplement this one as well. But this, again, adds a really beautiful additional flavor. And David's other libraries, Barbarian Cello, and some other ones, those are sort of all meant as complements to each other, basically. So really cool. Thanks again, David, for sharing this with me. And I hope you enjoyed this library, having a closer listen to it. If you do want to check it out, again, it's down below in the description. And of course, if you want to check out my sample library buyer's guide to see what I use on a regular basis every single day, I left that down below in the description as well. Absolutely free as a gift for checking out this video. And I hope you really enjoy it. I hope it's useful for you. You can let me know. Shoot me an email anytime. I'd love to hear from you. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one, and I'll see you very soon. Take care.